Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
So you know what's interesting about Panic Room?
We're just gonna jump right in.
We don't have to.
No, I mean that's good. But I gotta make the announcement first. I gotta do the thing. You know that we have the usual rigmarole. We gotta do the rigmarole.
Okay, you do the rigmarole,
right.
And
you get
then
your notes. You figure out your notes.
At least everyone knows what that there's something exciting about Panic Room that's coming.
Yeah, that was we call that in the business a teaser. That was a tease.
Yes, it was. It was nothing but pure tease.
Okay, so the rigmarole is first of all, we are on Stitcher. You gotta check out the show on Stitcher. It's fantastic. You can listen to it on your iPhone, iPad, Android phone, Kindle Fire, and more on demand, on the go. Stitcher is smart radio. They call it smart radio for your phone. You can find it in your appropriate app store of choice or at Stitcher.com. It is the smarter way to listen to radio. So you should check it out. And I'll tell you, Stitcher for us is doing quite well. Turns out there are quite a few people who like the Stitcher. And now it's between Stitcher and iTunes. That's where most of the people are finding us.
And it makes you feel very technologically advanced if you're using Stitcher. It's cutting edge.
It is it's technologically fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Is the thing. So definitely do that, and you can always make sure that you follow the brilliant Andy Nelson at the Movie Monkey on Twitter, and you can find me at Pete Wright on the Twitter, and so I'm even
trying to start using my Twitter,
which is good because it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I figured I should since you keep plugging it.
I'm gonna make you
use that Twitter thing now.
I'm gonna make you useful online. That's my goal.
That's why we do this whole thing.
Why we do this, to make you relevant online.
That's right.
All right, so now
thank you for that.
You're very welcome. You're
I've been feeling so irrelevant.
Yeah. Let's talk about Panic Room. So we're in the middle. We're really in the middle of our
really are.
Of our inverted our Benjamin Button Fincher-Fest.
If this were a week, this would be what we would call Hump Day.
If we were on our journey from the Shire to Mordor, would we be at Karhadras?
I think we would be past that. I think we would be maybe at with the Riders of Rohan.
We would be on the plains of Rohan.
Yes.
See that man, that's deep.
It is. It really puts things in perspective.
This movie. I actually was able to get my wife to watch this movie with me. It was not a comfortable thing. We had to do it in 30-minute increments over 4 days.
Oh, well, that's always fun.
Because and then we had to watch immediately after. We had to watch the New Girl.
The New Girl.
Have you seen?
Is that no?
Zoe Deschanel.
Deschanel, no.
Deschanel. I have a crush on that show. It's funny.
Show.
No, it's a funny thing. It's a short-term crush. I can feel it's just sort of a short-term crush because, I watched like 5 episodes. It's a half-hour sitcom, so you get 21 minutes and you're done. So I watched like 5 episodes of it the other night, and it's funny. It's Three's Company inverted, right? Only Zoe's character is just a little bit more affected than Jack Tripper. Like, she's not right. She's just not well. There's something not like socially not well. She's spectrumy. Like she's kind of like me in a social situation. It's very awkward. Like so awkward that you feel like there's something wrong.
So maybe the New Girl means in the world of reincarnates, she is a new being. So she's still fleshing out how to actually how to live properly.
Show's not that smart. You just went way smarter than the show. But it is really funny. I find myself it's like laugh out loud funny. It's like, you forget immediately what you were laughing about right after it's over. But it's really worth the laugh in the moment.
Oh, okay. Well,
so that's what we watched. We watched Panic Room for a half hour, and then The New Girl. It ended up being a good combination.
Very odd combination, but
no, it was good. So let's talk about Panic Room.
So I had a teaser at the beginning.
Yeah, tell me about
something very interesting about the film that I think defines, I guess, maybe what the writer and in turn the director David Fincher was aiming for with this film. The script for Panic Room, written by David Koepp, right at the top of page 1 he wrote, "This film is short, this film is fast." As a defining sense of what a reader for the script should picture as they read the script, and in turn, kind of what a director would aim for when making the film. I'm not quite sure it turned into something that could qualify as a short or fast film. However, maybe in David Fincher's world, it is.
Well, it's a shorter film just in raw duration than the others, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. But it seems it's almost the most sort of systematic, right? I mean, it's really like you can sort of feel as you're watching it, you really feel where there are real discrete breaks in the dramatic in the story arc of this film. Mm-hmm. There's the move in. They're in the panic room. We meet all the characters. There's the panic room switch, and in the last act, there's the resolution and the gore, the horrible living room slaughter. Right? I mean, it's just very it was so easy to watch in break. It was like watching a serial.
Sure.
David Koepp.
It is divided. It's divided very perfectly into the three acts, which essentially is what you're saying. First act is, I guess you could say, the invasion leading to them entering the panic room.
Right.
Second room is all of them, all of the scenes with Jodie Foster's character, Meg, and daughter, Sarah.
In the panic room.
And then act 3 begins with when she and the robbers essentially switch places.
Right.
And she has to figure out now how to get into the panic room to save her daughter.
So you like this movie a lot?
I do. It's not my favorite of Fincher's movies.
It seems like it was cursed.
It does seem like it was cursed. Oh man, this film. It's funny because going back to what I was saying about David Koepp writing this script, he wrote this on spec, which means he didn't get paid to write it. He just kind of came up with the idea, wanted to write it, and did. And then once it was written, he went and pitched it to the studios and found a buyer, basically. But he was always intending a very lean script and a very lean film. It all took place in one location. He really wrote this specifically with brevity in mind. David Fincher just finished up Fight Club, which, for all intents and purposes, was shot all over the place. There was, I think it said, at least 150 locations that they went to shoot that film. That's a very busy film all over the place. And he really wanted to shoot something that felt smaller. Of course, in David Fincher's mind, something that feels smaller can very easily turn into something that's incredibly complicated, which this one did.
Which is exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you look at what the scripted intent was of Koepp's original script, and you look at what actually became of this one quote location, and you end up sort of pulling apart the fact that they really it's like they didn't really talk, David Koepp and David Fincher.
Right.
Like they didn't really talk. This ended up being a significant special effects film to get these shots that Fincher orchestrated.
And to his credit, I mean, he really did some amazing things. And the thing the thing about Fincher is that he is a very meticulous filmmaker who really thinks about what he's doing with his films. And in this particular one, he wanted the camera to essentially not be connected with any particular character. Oftentimes you'll find the camera kind of more connected to the protagonist as it goes through the film. In this one, he very specifically designed it where the camera almost was a lifeless entity that just kind of moved through the house, showing us whatever we happened to need to be shown.
Well, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the camera's role, and I think you're right, but I think the camera actually was quite intimately connected to the house as a living kind of organism.
True. I think that you could say that.
I mean, if there's ever a film where the physical location took a character part, took on a role, a dramatic role in the film, this is that film. I mean, the house was an active participant.
Well, I don't know if I'd say active. It's not like it's a haunted house with,
No, it's not. But the way we are able to exist in the house, and I think it's, the way we exist and move from the organic floating camera, right? That the camera that goes through floors and walls and through the handle of the coffee pot, and that camera, and the security camera, which is very much part of the sort of nervous system of the house. You feel like you're in the camera's sort of eyes, and you're in the house's eyes. You can see what it sees and hear what it hears, and everyone else just sort of exists, kind of running around in it. It's like the house is infected.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's very interesting. It's an interesting way of looking at it. It is a very kind of haunting way to kind of feel as you move around the house. It's kind of disconnected, but you're right. It's as if we are the house kind of watching everything happen. It's a pretty interesting way to tell the story.
It is. I feel like I interrupted you. I'm sorry I did that.
No. You were
on a roll.
No, it's fine. But just the way that they moved the camera, it never feels as if, people are moving the camera. And that's specifically done with motion control cameras, where they basically program all the moves on a motorized dolly that moves everything. And then basically it does all the moves for you, and it's completely fluid. There's no bumps. There's no wiggles as it's moving, it like there would be in other films with dollies. As smooth as a dolly operator can operate, inevitably there's going to be minor variations. In this one, it's all just 100% fluid, flawless movement. And in order to achieve that, aside from building this entire 4-story house on a stage, they designed it in such a way where they could essentially move out whatever walls or house elements they needed to in order to make these shots happen. And what that often meant is, David Fincher could put the camera essentially anywhere he wanted to. And then what they would do, if they had to remove a wall and a banister or a door frame or whatever, they would just remove all of that, get the shot that they needed, and then digitally in post, they would go back in there and add the wall, the banister, the door frame, all back into the shot. And it creates this feel where literally we're moving, like he could move anywhere in that house that he wanted to. I mean, it's a really fascinating way to make a film.
Do you have any sense, or did you uncover anywhere the overall number of special effects shots? Like I'm specifically talking to the CG shots, in this film.
I'm sure it was mentioned. It was a lot more than I believe they ever anticipated. However,
well, that was my thing about the script. Like, after seeing this movie again and looking at it a little more critically, I had this voice in my head of David Fincher saying, "Oh, I love this script. Now I'm going to way overcomplicate it now."
And well, yeah, right. No kidding. It in different hands, this could very easily have been done on a very low budget by an independent filmmaker. It could be done in a very lean way for probably under, $10 million. And it could just be streamlined, fast, brief. You just move in, move out, get it done. That's totally doable. It could be an hour and a half, and there you go.
Right.
With Fincher, he did purposefully make decisions that gave it this feel that we've been talking about. And what that meant is it did create a lot more complications in post as far as making all these CG shots work. That being said, they also used a tool called pre-visualization or previs, where essentially it's like digital storyboards, and they had essentially blueprints of the house in their computer,
And this this digital previs, this was pretty new when this movie was coming out in 2002.
Yeah, it was pretty new. It had been used before.
Right.
I think this was probably one of the times where it was a lot more advanced. I do recall even going back all the way to, well, no, I guess that was more just digital storyboarding. It wasn't previs so much. This is essentially creating an environment, and you can make little characters. Like, it looks like very bad computer work done by like an elementary school kid. Right. It's kind of the look of these characters as they move through the environment, but you can move the characters however you want, and then you can position the camera where you want the camera to be, what lens you think it would be, what the framing is, and essentially all of the complicated shots, he did these previs computer renders of how he felt the shot should be, so that even though they were making it complicated by having to do all this digital work in post, the production was streamlined to a point where they knew weeks before any actor ever stepped on set, they knew exactly where the camera was going to be for that day, what the shots were going to be. They could tell the actor, yes, you're in the shots today, but all we're going to see are your feet. So the actor didn't have to worry. Everything was very fine-tuned,
making the actual production really much more systematic than. I wonder if we could look at a delta of the overall production time, just how much time is saved through digital previs on a film like this.
Time was saved. That being said, they still spent 6 months shooting this film. So yes, time was saved, but it still took a lot longer than they'd planned. Technical issues, camera problems, actor problems. There were just a lot of issues on this film that led to it running for 6 months.
Wow. Well, we mentioned that this film was sort of cursed to begin with. It's hard to read about the film without seeing a sentence like, some very simple algebra. Fincher originally was working with X, and early in production, that person dropped out, was fired, had a knee injury, got frustrated, and left. I mean, it happens many, many times, to the point where Fincher originally went to the studios and said, to Columbia, and said, I think you should just take the insurance money. We got to shelve it. This is not working. And the studio said, no, you got to make a movie.
Yeah. Well, they were pushing up against a Writers Guild strike. And so it was one of those things where they were getting nervous when things kept happening, that, the studio had to make a decision. Do we just kill the project and eat the money that we've spent, or do we push through it and try to get it done before the Writers Guild strike happens? They opted to push through it, and it still worked. They were able to get it all done, and it all worked. But it certainly had its complications. So I guess we should rattle off the complications, huh? Yeah.
Well, I would start. I was trying to figure out where to start. I think the obvious ones are with casting, but I wanted to start with Darius Khondji. Is that how you pronounce his name? Khondji?
Yeah, Darius Khondji, right. Yeah, he shot Seven. He was the director of photography or cinematographer for David Fincher on Seven, and just did a beautiful job with that film.
That's a gorgeous film.
Yeah. And in this film, because of the previs that Fincher had already been doing and the way that they had been building the set and planning it all, Darius came into the film feeling that a lot of decisions that he felt he should have been a part of, he felt that the decisions were already made. And, I think he was a little miffed about that. And, he was not too happy. I don't think it destroyed the relationship between him and Fincher. Fincher said, he's waiting for the right project to work with Khondji again, where he can, find the right project for him. Hasn't happened yet, but I certainly hope they work together, because I love Darius Khondji's films. He actually just shot Midnight in Paris with Woody Allen,
which was fantastic.
And it looked beautiful.
It was gorgeous. It was
totally
beautiful.
fell in love with Paris in all the different ages watching that film. It's just a stunning film.
It was a stunning film. Okay, so there's Darius.
So he ended up leaving very early on. I don't think he shot anything. I think it was still while they were
right.
Maybe they had started shooting. I'm not quite sure. It's not clear. But regardless, Conrad W. Hall came in and replaced him on this one.
Well, and I think you're right. From the way I understand and reading up on it, they did not actually start shooting anything, and Conrad Hall came in. But it seems relevant to me, given what we've already discussed in Fincher's sort of bent to create and work with a team as he moves forward, and later films, you see that team really sort of has changed and then solidifies again, and he works with the same people over and over and over again. And so it feels like a significant thing when, Darius Kanji, who had done such terrific work on Seven, leaves so early in the process. So that one seemed, from a human resources perspective, that seems like a tough one.
It does. But at least Fincher had worked a little bit with Conrad Hall Jr. before. He did some work on Fight Club. He wasn't the DP on Fight Club, but he had been doing, I believe, some second unit camera work on that film. So at least they had known each other, and he was still putting his faith in somebody that he'd worked with before. Although
he just doesn't have and he didn't, Panic Room, I think, was his high point, the high water mark on Conrad Hall's. American Beauty, maybe.
Well, I don't know if he
didn't actually. He wasn't principal. It was his dad, but he worked on it. But The Punisher, 2 for the Money.
He's done some bigger movies.
He really?
He has done. What has he done? Because he really has taken off, kind of since his father passed away. Let me look and see what else he's done.
Well, while you do that, let's look at some casting issues. The original cast included Nicole Kidman as Meg Altman, to the point where Nicole Kidman was actually shooting, but had to drop out due to a knee injury that she had sustained apparently on Moulin Rouge, and she couldn't finish the film.
Yeah, not only did she sustain that injury on Moulin Rouge, blew out her knee, on Panic Room, her other knee started bothering her, and her doctor said, "You can finish the movie, you just can't go up any stairs."
Right.
In a film that takes place in a 4-story house.
Yeah, lots of running, lots of barreling up and down stairs. Not a good match for Nicole Kidman. So Jodie Foster comes in with a very short prep time to get this to jump into the role, and
essentially less than a week. It was crazy short.
And as what do you think of Jodie Foster's performance in this film generally?
Oh, I loved it. I think it's just a fantastic performance. But as they say, as Fincher says, as David Koepp says, as everyone involved said, it changed the script, because it's hard putting somebody like Jodie Foster into a role previously inhabited by Nicole Kidman. They can equally make as great a film, but they're kind of a different personality. And so they did have to kind of tweak the script a little bit in order to fit Jodie Foster a little better than Nicole Kidman.
I think, I think Jodie Foster's performance is really, best characterized by her, by the way she works with, in the end, her daughter, Sarah Altman, played by Kristin Stewart, who was also a replacement for Hayden Panettiere. Now, Hayden, she's been in a bunch of stuff. She's I think she's probably best known for her role in Heroes.
Yeah, Save the Cheerleader, Save the World.
Save the Cheerleader, Save the World. And she was swapped out after only 19 days of shooting because Fincher, quote, found her irritating.
And not her irritating, at least what they talk about on the commentary. He didn't name her in the commentary, but what he says is he felt her cuteness was a little irritating. He just didn't feel that it was the right sort of look to be playing that role. And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
I'm glad. I'm glad you said that. I had a feeling that was it. You know, sometimes you get these quotes and they're taken totally out of context, and because I think Hayden Panettiere does if not slightly overwrought, she does good work.
Look at her in Racing Stripes.
Okay, really. That said, back to Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster and Kristin Stewart as a mother-daughter pair were perfect.
Yeah, it's funny because Kristin Stewart was brought in before the Nicole Jodie swap, and then when Jodie was brought in, everybody was looking at them like, "Oh my God, it's like Jodie and mini Jodie." It's like everyone's like, it's exactly what Jodie's daughter would look like.
Exactly, it's unreal,
frightening. Yeah, it was
when
a
you
perfect
see them.
casting.
It's not even so much in the beginning, when she's riding the scooter around the house, but at the end when her head is on Jodie Foster's lap and she's reading the newspaper, and it's like Jodie Foster is cradling herself.
Mm-hmm.
It was unreal.
Yeah, it's great casting.
Really perfect. I mean, just dumb luck casting, on short notice after those switches. I mean, to end up with that kind of a match, it was just perfect.
And you know what's interesting about Jodie Foster is Fincher had been talking to her. They've been talking to each other about working together ever since The Game, actually, because Fincher was a little unsure about the script for The Game as far as Michael Douglas's character and his brother, played by Sean Penn. He had a hard time kind of identifying with that brother relationship and wanted to make it a sister. And it was a younger sister, and he was going to cast Jodie Foster as the sister. It didn't end up happening, and honestly, I think the film actually works well the way it is. But that's where they started talking. So it was nice that they finally had an opportunity to work together.
They did a terrific job on that relationship. Now the Criminals.
Wait. Before we jump into The Criminals.
Oh, okay.
Let me finish about Nicole Kidman.
Okay.
The great thing about her is, obviously she had to leave because of injuries. There was no resentment. There was no problem with it. And the great thing is she called to touch base at some point later and was chatting with David Fincher, who said, "Hey, you know what? I have this little tiny role. It's just on the phone. It's Steven's girlfriend." Steven is Jodie Foster's character's
new love.
It's her.
Jodie Foster's
it's her
her
ex-husband's
husband's new love. Yeah.
Right, and so this girlfriend on the phone that you only hear like 3 lines from actually ends up getting played by Nicole Kidman.
That's so funny.
Which was it's great. And just one of those little kind of throwaway tidbits.
And it's totally uncredited.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's just
wonderful.
great to know, though.
All right.
So anyway, you're going to go on to the
the trio. Burnham Jr. and Raul. Let's start with Dwight Yoakam, because really, Dwight Yoakam is awesome.
He is so awesome. He's
Dwight
great.
Yoakam is so scary.
All of them are great, but yeah, Dwight Yoakam is just terrifying. And I think a lot of it, what makes it so terrifying, is that he's wearing his ski mask like for
most of the
90% of the film, and it just becomes this fascinating character. And everybody, David Koepp and Fincher both apologized to Dwight, as an actor coming on and finding out you're going to be wearing a mask for the majority of your role is kind of difficult, but I think he ended up enjoying it, and it's such a great role, and it's such a dark role.
Oh,
it really
it's so
is.
dark. It's so dark. It's funny because that the way so Dwight Yoakam as Raul, Jared Leto as Junior,
mm-hmm.
and Forrest Whitaker as Burnham.
What's great about Jared Leto in this role, because he had worked with Fincher on Fight Club,
right?
He came in and Fincher had cast him. And Jared Leto called Fincher up one day. He's like, "I'm coming over. I got to show you something. I'm going to give you. I want to give you a chance to talk me out of it. Otherwise, I think that this is how I see the character." And he comes over, and he had his hair all cornrowed like it is in the film.
Right.
he and this girl he was hanging out with were down at the beach or something, and he just decided to do it on a total whim. He's like, I think this is the character. I totally want to do this. Now's your chance to tell me if you think it's a bad idea, and I'll undo it. But otherwise, I want to go for it. And Fincher was just like, that totally seems like the sort of thing that this little rich kid who's trying to, be, kind of all dark and tough. It seems like the sort of thing that he would try to do. So I loved it.
I love so much. That's really funny. I could sort of see Jared Leto as a person kind of feeling like cornrows would be a great idea. It ends up really working for the character, but I don't know the guy. What do I know? But what I find so interesting about the way these three guys play these three characters, and what makes this as ultimately kind of a heist movie, right? That side of that sort of side of the psyche of this film so interesting to me is that the power structure changes between the three of them and rotates like every 15 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Each character does not get to play sort of get to play their initial role for more than about 15 minutes. Jared Leto comes in and he's all tough and he knows the plan and he's got the plan, and then things get shaken up. Mm-hmm. And then, Forrest Whitaker is the brains of the operation, and then things get shaken up, and Raoul starts taking power with a gun, showing that he's brought a gun to this thing, and he has the power, and it keeps rotating as everything they try ends up getting them more and more sort of hurt, and the house more and more kind of demolished.
Yeah,
it is a fascinating dynamic that these guys played really well.
It is, and it's it's great stuff. And to see Forrest Whitaker, who always carries just a great gravitas and just has this amazing presence and humanity, even when he's playing a thief like he is here, he brings so much to it. And those choices that he makes, where he realizes toward the end, he's it's just like, I'm going to save these people, but I've made these choices, and no matter what, even though I'm going to save them, I'm still going to have to live with the decisions that I made. And right. It's just good stuff. He's great at that sort of role.
Well, and really great when tasked with being sort of the bad guy who discovers his own humanity kind of in the heart of the action. When he goes in during the swap, when he goes in and sees Kristin Stewart or Sarah Altman has gone into her,
her
gluten, not gluten, diabetic
coma. Right.
She's on her way. She's
on
moving
her way
south
into the coma. Right. Yeah.
And there's that look in his eyes that is where you just get that he's totally stymied. He has no idea what to do, and then Raoul takes over. And you see that sort of dynamic. Do you ever run across the trailer for a video game? As a video game of Dead Island?
Mm-mm.
It was horrifying, and it was horrifying for me to watch. It's about a zombie game, right? It's a zombies running loose on an island, and whatever the game I never actually played. But that, and maybe I wouldn't have been affected by this, 10 years ago. But watching this trailer, it starts with you're zoomed very close into the iris of a person, and it very slowly zooms out, and you realize this person is staring at you sideways as the camera tilts up, and then the person lifts up off the ground. You see it's a little girl, and you suddenly see now that you're moving backwards through time, and you see that this is a little girl who is falling, and you see shards of glass come into focus. So you get the view that she's sort of fallen out of a window, and she goes up, 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 and suddenly she's in the window. And this whole thing is watching really from the perspective of this little girl being transformed into a zombie. But the dramatic story is of her parents trying to protect her from these crazed zombies that actually end up biting her, ripping her, and you watch it all kind of unveil the story sort of unveil itself in reverse.
Jeez.
It is horrifying, and I almost couldn't get through it. And I don't know why I watched it, but I had that same feeling watching Panic Room, that sequence when the daughter is in trouble. She's deeply in trouble, and the door closes on Dwight Yoakam's hand, and you realize that that's going to fuel his rage, and she is alone and totally helpless inside the panic room, and mom can't do anything about it. That affected me more now than it did when I watched this movie the last time, which I had not seen it since my daughter was born 10 years ago.
It does make it hard as a parent to watch scenes like that when it's like, everything you do is about protecting your child. And like, it's amazing how that animal rage and that protective instinct just totally kicks in with Jodie or with Meg. And at that point, she'll do anything to save her daughter, even if it means letting them have everything they want.
Right. Hey, I lost you a minute. You said she'll do anything to save her daughter, even if it means letting them have anything they want. And then did you go silent there?
I muted because I was coughing.
Oh.
I had a coughing fit. Sorry.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but it is. That's what kind of switches her and changes her as a character into somebody that now uses all of the devices that she can come up with in order to not just save her daughter, which she does through getting Forrest, appealing to him to give Sarah the injection, but also to do everything she can, keep the cop from coming into the house to help save her daughter, yet set up this whole elaborate trap to get these last two remaining bad guys and to stop them from escaping, basically.
So how do you feel about the resolution of the film, right? There are 2 points that sort of stick to me. The first one is when she's having the conversation with the officers, Officer Kurlander and Keeney at the door. Mm-hmm. And there is this great moment of really tight shots on their faces, on Jodie Foster's face and on, is it Ian Buchanan? I think, or no, it was
Kurlander is the realtor.
He's the real. I mean, Paul Schultz.
Paul Schultz, the officer, right?
The officer, and when she's looking really close into his eyes, and he says, if there was something, for example, you could not say, like, for example, there are people in the house, and for example, you could give us a signal, like, doing your eyes, blinking your eyes a few times, right?
Yeah, and your eyes are just like,
I'm blinking. I'm blinking. Like
I think everyone in the audience is like blinking for her. Come on, blink, blink, blink.
She doesn't blink, and she has that fantastic sort of, "You guys are good. This would be great if there were really a problem. They train you well," and yet they still come back, the cops.
Yeah.
So we're to understand that they got the message from her anyway. Because they bring SWAT team. I mean, they didn't just ring the doorbell. They come in with the SWAT team.
Yeah, I like it. I bought it. From I don't know, maybe from his perspective, the whole thing seems kind of suspicious, and I don't know. I kind of bought into the fact that the cops would show up. It felt right, I guess. Okay. At the same time, and also I liked the fact that it kind of tied up the story. That was a great way to tie up the story with Burnham's character as he's trying to escape. But unfortunately, even though he helped protect Meg and Sarah from Raoul, he still has to pay for his crimes.
Right.
And so I like that as far as how the cops resolve that. But I like that they didn't save the day. I like that Meg is still the one who has to fight against Raoul and essentially try to take him down. Even though Burnham is he's the one who ends up changing over the course of the story and makes the decision to save her.
Yeah, I think it ended it ended with a really solid resolution. Like, I felt good about how it ended, and yet it's only when I sort of get a few minutes out of the end of the film, and I think back, what? She comes out of the elevator after it really feels like the situation is going to resolve itself.
And that's a very good point. That's something that they definitely discuss in the making of. They, for all intents and purposes, it does feel like they're almost at the door. They'll let Sarah go, and Burnham and Raoul will just escape into the night. However, I think it boils down to that maternal instinct to protect your own, and she still feels that she has to fight to save Sarah,
Right.
and so she takes Raoul down.
Oh, does she ever? So she takes Raoul keeps kicking.
Yeah, he doesn't want to quit.
He doesn't want to quit. He comes back. Burnham obviously shoots him, saves the day. She ends up having that moment with her daughter where she mouths, "It's okay, I'm okay."
Mm-hmm.
And only then does SWAT enter the house and catch Burnham. And there's this moment. There's another one of those moments. I think this is a third one of those moments in the film where you really feel like something's going to happen that doesn't. Right. The first one, it's when Burnham is standing up on the edge and he's up on the ledge and he's holding on to the bearer bonds that he's just 22 million in bearer bonds that he's just stolen. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you really, you want him to sort of get away.
I know.
He's the anti-hero that you want to get away. You want him to get that money and do what he needs to do. He's the only one who seems to have any sort of rational need for the money. You sort of feel like there's a family drive for him to save his family, protect his family, and that's why he gets this money. And he has it, and then he lets it go, and you. At some point, I'm left thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to do something and get himself shot.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. And that almost says more about his character than any of his other decisions, that he doesn't take the easy way out and he lets go of the bearer bonds. And it is just this brilliant, glistening wash of parchment and rain, all sort of backlit and burned out as it floats off into the air. It is a terrific resolution, if not a release, for me.
I
don't know.
That's interesting.
It's like, insofar as I'm glad that he is gonna, I'm sad for him more than glad for him to pay for his crime. I'm sad that he's gonna take that as a viewer. That was a fantastic choice because it leaves me torn. It leaves me feeling something.
In the script, he dies.
Why the change?
I don't know. Maybe they wanted him to. They wanted him to live and pay for his crimes. Maybe because we like him, and maybe it was harder for the audience to see him die than it was to live and go to prison.
No, I think it's harder to see him live.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, you've got the script. I mean, did you feel like it resolved?
The thing about, the script's a little different, though, because he's not in it to, get money for his family or anything like that. He's in it because he's got gambling debts and stuff like that. So
he wasn't just sort of the washed out white collar kind of.
Yeah, and he's still more of a bum. He's just kind of a, gambling debt bum and just needs the money to pay off these debts. So I don't think in the script it was one where you really felt that sorry for him when he died. I don't know. I like the fact that in the film, the way that it ends, you end up with this character that you feel sorry for, the fact that he ends up getting busted, but it doesn't let him. They don't let him get away with it, because in some sense, getting killed, I think, is also another way to kind of get away from things. Like, he doesn't have to stand up and be responsible for what he's done.
Well, and that's the whole point, right? Every decision he made in the movie, even as his character arc changed from being the bad guy, the crook, to the good guy, the savior. Every one of his decisions was the harder one, right?
Yeah.
It was the harder one to go back and save the family and kill Raul. It was the harder one to turn around at the end and not get out scot-free, but to pay for what he had done. It was the harder decision. I think that's what makes it such a rewarding and emotional feeling at the end of the film.
Yeah,
I'm glad he didn't get shot.
No, yeah, I am too. It is tough, but I think that it's the right way to end it.
What was that other movie that you liked that I hated because of the last? It was the Ghost Rider.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's why I didn't like the last 5 seconds.
Oh, but see, I like it because it's like, after all of that he goes through, he finds out who it is, and she basically has him killed, and I thought that was great. It was a nice little twist at the end.
Kick in the gut. That's what it was.
It definitely was.
Okay, so Panic Room cost him just under $50 million to make, and looks like it made almost $200 million.
Yeah. It did well money wise, and that's just theatrical. That's not counting any form of DVD sales or anything. So it did well for itself. Definitely was a success financially. How
do you think this movie is really remembered and perceived in as now that it's been 10 years?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I think it's perceived as a very strong thriller. It doesn't hold back. It's clean. It's crisp. It moves quickly, and even though it's almost 2 full hours, it really does feel like it kind of speeds along, and it's just taut with very real characters that you buy into. I know some people who felt it was a little too flashy as far as the camera moves through the coffee pot handle and stuff like that, and through the floors. I don't think that, none of that ever bothered me. I always felt it was a very interesting way, like we were talking about, kind of that perspective of the house where we could kind of see whatever it is that was going on in the house wherever we were. But I think it'll always be remembered as a great midpoint transition for Fincher to kind of move from the, more genre films, I guess we could say, that he had been doing, into more, I hate to, sound trite with something like this, but adult films where it's, adult dramatic stories.
Right.
Benjamin Button was a much more dramatic adult type of story.
Adult as in contrast to adolescent.
Yeah, it's not just kind of a genre picture. It's something that has a little more meat to it. It's something that, Panic Room is something teenagers would happily go sit through on a date. Same with Fight Club or The Game or Seven. It's kind of, I think for Fincher, it feels kind of like a nice transition where he continued working with all of the technical tricks that he has while getting ready to move into much more adult stories, meaning, you're not going to find as many teenage kids on dates going to see Benjamin Button.
That is the truth.
He certainly has kind of gone back into that with Dragon Tattoo, I think. But even then, I think that has more of the adult qualities to it.
Yeah, I would say, sure, the Dragon Tattoo has some thrill to it, some of that sort of adrenaline fueled adolescent rush, but the overall balance of the film is a very kind of grown up adult thriller.
Yeah,
it's not when you look at Fight Club, it's that transition from all ego to id, you know. I mean, it's like that transition from, you know, God, I just get such a rise out of punching people in the face, you know, right. To you know, to Benjamin Button is a very different part of Fincher's character. And it goes back to what we've talked about before, how he's choosing, you can watch him sort of choose films that address that kind of a different side of himself. And that's a pretty powerful transition. And this, I think you're right. I think this is that sort of mile marker.
Yeah, it's a perfect right in the middle film for him at this point in his career. But
so, you know, in terms of, you know, we've talked about technically what they've achieved in terms of digital pre-visualization. We talked about you know, some of the CG and the practical effects that come from building the set in such a way. Was this film remembered for anything, you know, anything else that you feel like it served as kind of a waypoint in his technical career as technical a director as Fincher is?
I don't think I can't think of anything specific, but it just, I think, you know, he's somebody who's constantly using every technological tool that he has for him when he's making his films, regardless of what they happen to be. The digital cameras weren't around in time for this film to be made, but you know, they were for Zodiac. Mm-hmm. But this film, even then, he was still using the previs and still finding ways, like I talked about, where he could almost deconstruct the house and then shoot it the way he wanted to, and then reconstruct the house digitally. I mean, it's pretty marvelous way to do it. And honestly, I mean, it's seamless. Like, I would challenge anyone to watch this film and say, okay, that wall right there, that's CG.
Yeah,
that banister, that's not the real banister right there. That's completely added in later.
Yeah, you know, I think the only reason that you would be able to pick those out is because of, you know, the context of history, right? I mean, you just know that he was putting the camera in places that it could not go. And mm-hmm. you made a point of the sort of cheekiness of the coffee mm-hmm. pot handle. Yeah. But anytime the camera floats through two narrow banisters, you know, banister, you know, spindles, yeah. You know that's going to be a CG pull apart. And but you would not be able to tell by just looking at it. If you didn't know, this movie could have passed as a movie that was made, you know, much later. It was fascinating. Yeah. It's and I feel like I minimized that by just asking the question the way I did, because I think that is what this film is remembered for.
Yeah.
You know, the way he built this set and the way he stayed. I mean, this could have just as easily been a fascinating Hitchcock film. You know, it's like
Oh yeah.
You know, it really has that vibe to it, and that's, I think, why it holds up so well. I mean, you know, we've seen this movie before. My wife and I are sitting in bed, and she is literally doing I'm, you know, like huddling under the covers because she is so,
right.
You know, she's so, you know, affected by it. It's a great film.
Yeah. A couple things that I want to hit before we turn this off. The first one is a great quote that Jodie Foster says, talking about David Fincher and his process of filmmaking. I'll just read this quote that she said. Because, you know, it's always brought up in every film that David Fincher releases, how many shots that he gets of any given scene. Like, instead of, you know, shooting 5 or 6 shots to get a scene right, he's shooting 30, 40, even that one shot in Social Network where they hit 99 takes of that shot. So this is a quote about that. The number of takes was quite astounding. The number of shots was amazing. What is interesting is that there is virtually nothing on the cutting room floor. He's not somebody who overshoots so he can figure out what he wants later on. Every single one of these shots is shot specifically so it can be cut into a sequence. He does not overshoot. So it's an interesting combination of somebody who does as many takes as possible in order to get it right, but he's not taking a stab in the dark and just shooting a bunch of unusable footage. And that's what gives it the signature. That's the mistake I think that a lot of directors make when they finally come into a big budget film, is that they tend to get less and less prepared and procrastinate more and more. So they just shoot a lot of coverage because they figure somewhere down the line, they'll have to make a choice. But what happens is you lose your signature, your voice. The film doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a lot of things thrown together. It's a really interesting quote about David Fincher and other directors in general making these big budget films, and how he really retains that signature that I think we've talked about in all of his films thus far in our conversations, and how they all are essentially David Fincher films.
Absolutely. You get the feeling that he is a powerfully mechanical filmmaker.
Yeah.
That he's just he really understands what it's going to take to create what is in his head.
And at the same time, while being powerfully mechanical, one of the actors, I can't remember who it was in Benjamin Button, they comment how oftentimes if you have a really technical director like that, they'll often not be as good at or interested in or versatile with like the acting side of it. It's kind of like directors tend to be one or the other. And she said he is one of those directors who's versatile at both. He really knows how to do the technical stuff, but at the same time, he completely understands the acting side and knows how to work with his actors and does everything he can to get their performances just right.
That's fascinating. That's fantastic. So, this movie did not win any of the big awards. It did win the best, let's see, it was the ASCAP award for the score by Howard Shore, which is a deep, dark, powerful score.
Yeah,
it's haunting. It is a haunting score for this film, but it while it was nominated for some other kind of thriller awards, it didn't get any big nods.
No.
No,
it was not. I mean, it's not what you generally would consider an award film.
No,
yeah, it's a thriller that people go see just for fun, and I don't think they were planning on it kind of being there on the Oscar stage or anything like that.
And yet, it's a thriller with a lot more substance than you first give it credit for. So,
definitely,
it's definitely one that holds up, and certainly a movie we like a lot.
So, one more thing, or actually two more things.
Go ahead.
I promise I'll finish
45 seconds.
The first one, Jodie Foster, when she was making this, found out that she was pregnant. So she, and remember, they shot this for 6 months. So by the time they got to the end of this film, she was in her third trimester. And they calculated this film where she's just like, I have to get to the part where I put the sweater on. I have to get to the part where I put the sweater on. Because that was going to be the only real opportunity that she would finally have to try to hide her pregnant belly better.
Wow. So
they really had to shoot around her belly as much as possible. And obviously the stunt scenes are done with her stunt double. But yeah, I mean, they got to a point where toward the end of the film, like all they could practically film of her was her face because the rest of her just looked so pregnant.
That's too funny. Well, that is actually interesting and maybe explains why this film was shot chronologically. It was shot in order.
Right.
In script order, which is pretty rare. So all for the inside shots of the house, they were shot start to finish.
Yes, right.
What was your second point?
Now I
have another. I actually have another one. This is another bit of trivia that I love about Kristin Stewart.
I remember what it is, but tell me. Go ahead.
Well, it was Kristin Stewart
tell me.
That she grew 3 inches over the course of that 6 months.
Right.
And started out shorter than Jodie Foster and ended up, quote, towering over her.
Right.
By the end of the film. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, they're lucky that her facial features didn't
change. Exactly.
Yeah.
What was yours?
This is kind of, in a sense, unrelated to Panic Room, but it is related to David Koepp. As I said, he wrote this on spec, and on the commentary on the DVD, which this DVD, along with most Fincher films after this, actually most of Fincher's films are packaged fantastically with a lot of great commentary and making of stuff. But David Koepp does an audio commentary about the script with William Goldman, a fantastic screenwriter in his own right. And they're talking about writing, and they're talking about the nature of spec scripts. And both of them are real hesitant to write spec scripts because, as David Koepp says, he comes up with an idea and he starts writing it, but then he kind of runs out of steam and doesn't know where to go with it. And William Goldman, essentially, he says the only spec script that he ever wrote was, I think he said it was like Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
He said it's essentially kind of considered the first spec script. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he said. But it's funny that these two great writers who've written tons of amazing scripts, between the two of them, both of them would much rather work on somebody else's idea or adapt something rather than write their own story. I just think it's an interesting look into the minds of great screenwriters who really need to have another idea given to them by someone else in order to turn it into something great.
I think that is an interesting thing. It's worth thinking about. That's a whole other conversation, this idea of working on spec.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to kind of keep a finger on that as we look at other films, and figure out the ones that we can kind of pinpoint, those that are written on spec, and those that are work for hire.
Well, not just things that are written on spec or work for hire, but if it's original or based on something.
Mm-hmm, right.
So obviously, David Koepp probably had a much easier time writing Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull than he did Panic Room. So
I kind of hope not.
Yes.
What do we have? So next week we're gonna hit up Fight Club.
Yeah.
God, I can't wait. I don't even. Oh, okay. I love that film. I love that film so much.
I know. Well, they're all great films. It's hard.
Well, they are, but I really loved it. I have a deep relationship with this film. Fight Club.
Good. I look forward to learning about that relationship.
Oh man, can't wait.
Does this mean that you have an alter ego and
Yes.
You have your own Tyler Durden?
He may show up. I don't know.
Wow. That will make for an interesting episode.
That's right. We live in a treehouse called the Bourgeois Playground. Sometimes we drink a tea.
Wow, that's a very interesting Tyler Durden that you have.
I'm not well. Good night, Andy.
Oh, good night.
Here at The Next Reel, we've been passionately discussing movies week after week since 2011. That's a lot of movies and a lot of conversation.
Sure is, Pete, and to be honest, it's a lot of work too, but it's work that we love. If you have been enjoying our show, we'd like to remind you that there are ways to support us even if you're not able to become a member just yet. You might have heard us talk about our new watch page where we've listed every movie that we've talked about paired with Amazon or Apple links to rent or buy the movie.
Now we'd like to introduce you to our originals page. Let's take a trip down memory lane, Andy. Do you remember what the first film we discussed on The Next Reel was that was an adaptation?
Well, let's see. It wasn't obviously our Indiana Jones series because those were all original. Then we did Charlie Kaufman. Oh, of course. It was adaptation from Susan Orlean's Orchid Thief.
Exactly. We have covered quite a few adaptations over the years, and now we're providing a way for our listeners to delve into the original source material.
That's right. Just head over to thenextreel.com/originals, and you can see the list of all the adaptations that we have discussed.
From our David Fincher series, featuring The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Social Network, Zodiac, Benjamin Button, and Fight Club.
To our Paranoia trilogy with The Parallax View and All the President's Men, we have covered a variety of adaptations.
Those were some great discussions, especially Fight Club. And let's not forget our baseball series with The Natural and Field of Dreams, adapted from Shoeless Joe.
And Up in the Air and Thank You for Smoking. So many memorable conversations.
Absolutely. And you know what's exciting? Each purchase you make through our links doesn't cost you any extra, but a percentage goes to support The Next Reel and our family of shows.
You can support us while diving deeper into these fantastic stories, whether it's the paper, audiobook, or Kindle version.
We've also included plays and movies. If they were the source, we've put it on there.
So what are you waiting for? Head to thenextreel.com/originals, support The Next Reel, and get your next great read today.
I'm off to reread Fight Club. Now, where did I put my Kindle?